Hello everyone, my name is Fernando Cremer. I'm a solutions engineer at Replicated, and on this video I'd like to talk to you about using Helm Charts with Replicated. Before we jump into the demo, let's spend a minute on Helm. Let's talk about why are folks using Helm. As you know, we work with a lot of smart folks that are using Helm, so why are they using Helm? So one of the reasons we see is templating. And what templating allows you to do is define a value in one place and reference it throughout everywhere else, basically. So with a Helm chart, or when you write your Helm charts, what you can do is you can define, for example, a value in a values file, and then that value can be spread or fed into other manifests. So when it comes to maintenance and things like that, you put it once. The other reason that we see a lot of Helm adoption has to do with the mechanism that allows you to apply some installation logic. It's more ordering, right? Sequencing, I would say, is probably a better word. But the ability to specify hook weights or specify pre-install hooks, these things allows you to determine the order by which your microservices should be deployed. Common example could be, let's make sure the database gets deployed before the web front end. And the third reason that we also see Helm being implemented is kind of back to the first one, right? Is not only that the templating saves you time as you write and maintain your Helm chart, it provides your end user, the individual that's going to deploy the application, provide information about their environment. Maybe your default port is blacked in their environment, so they need to specify a different one. Or maybe you want them the ability to enter their default password that we're going to use, like the initial admin password. Now, when it comes to software vendors, so the three previous ones are more generally speaking, right, when we're out in the field. But when we work with replicated customers, and these are usually independent software vendors, the reason why they're using Helm as a way to distribute their software to on-premise environments, and this could be private cloud or physically on-premise, is they like the idea of a single binary, right? So these maybe are folks that have already delivered on-premise in the past, and it was a jar file or it was an MSI. So just making a tar.gz available is similar method of distribution, right? So it feels familiar to them. Again, back to the values file for software vendors, this is huge, right? Because each of their customers are going to have to provide information about their environment. If your software requires a backend database, there's a chance that your end customer will want to use the one that is supported by their DBAs, because maybe that's the one that gets backed up. So depending on your application, how critical it is to the customer's business, you need to provide information about the runtime environment. And the last thing that we see why folks are, especially software vendors, are going to Helm is because there are folks that know it. It's widely adopted in the community. So it's a skill that they can hire, and also it's a skill that their end customers have. So chances are, if a customer is asking you for a Kubernetes version of your application, they know Helm. So those are kind of the reasons why software vendors start to use Helm to distribute their applications. But as these software vendors try to scale up, meaning operationalize this, right? It's not just one or two customers, but 5, 10, 100, even 1,000. You start to run into some limitations, things that don't scale as well. So one of them is the single binary. While it provides an S-wave distribution, it does require Kubernetes and Helm in the customer environment. So that means that either you can only target customers that already have Kubernetes, or you need to think of another solution, something else, to install Kubernetes there first. Maybe you have to install K3s first, so you have to figure that part out. The built-in mechanism to provide runtime information is done in a manifest or as a parameter on the command line. So when your end customer has to run, type in Helm, install, they can provide a parameter like -- values and then, or the values. I forget the exact syntax there. But anyway, it's a process that requires some skill, right? Some tech skill. And if you are not used to doing this, it's error prone. I write manifest every day and I still get my indentation wrong sometimes. The last one is it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? So while it's great that Helm is widely adopted, let's face it, folks, we're technical people, we're curious people. We want to see how other folks build things, how things are put together. So if you hand me a Helm chart, I'm going to open it and see how you put it together and just curious about it, right? And if I'm going to be the one that's going to deploy it into the environment I'm responsible for, I might improve it, right? I might make changes to it so it works better in my environment. So while that may seem like a natural thing and okay, right? Once you multiply these times, like I said, 100 customers, that's the potential that now you're going to have 100 different looking deployments. And for your support team, that's quite difficult to support because each support case deals with a different instance that's configured differently and it looks different. What it also can lead to is that the more the Helm chart deviates from your version, the more it branches off. Once you release a new version, the merging, right, will have to be done. They have to reconcile your new version of your new Helm chart of the new version. Reconcile it with the changes they've made. And while that's doable and there's solutions to merge files and everything, it is something that somebody has to do, right? It's work that has to be scheduled, put in the backlog, prioritized, and so forth. And we know priorities, how those work. So how does Replicated support Helm, specifically with these specific challenges? So you can take your Helm chart, and in Replicated, you can just make it part of a replicated release. And if you're familiar with Replicated, a replicated release means you can now deploy your application into environments that either have Kubernetes or don't. For those that don't have Kubernetes, all we need is a Linux host, right? It can be a physical machine, it could be a VM. Instead of having folks provide the values on the command line or in a manifest, provide them a UI where they can enter that information. That will reduce a lot of the errors that usually happen because maybe the docs were wrong, or I just wasn't paying attention, or I hit the enter key before I meant to provide the last value, right? And then another advantage we use in Replicated is that we will use Helm when it comes to deploy the application. In prior versions, we would just template out the Helm chart and then provide the manifest to the Kubernetes API. But as folks got more mature in Helm, I would say, right? They started to really use more of the features like hooks and things like that. We realized we should just use Helm under the covers, and that's what we started doing in version 1.57. So let me transition out to the demo, and I'll walk you through all of this. So now for the demo, I'm going to switch over to Visual Studio Code here, where I have downloaded the Helm chart for WordPress. I went to Bitnami GitHub repository and cloned it locally. So here I opened the WordPress chart, and as you can see, it has a lot of contents in here, a lot of YAMLs. This is some of the templating that I referred to earlier. So as you can see, there's some if statements. You can add some logic there as well. So this is the Helm. This is all the files that makes up the WordPress Helm chart. And to create the actual binary, I'm going to run helm package. I'm going to provide a period for the current location. And this created that tar.gz that you see at the bottom in my Explorer here. So now I'm going to switch over to the replicated vendor portal, and I'm going to create my release. So first, let's start with a brand new application. So for this application, I'm going to provide it a name, replicated-WordPress. We'll call it that. So I'm going to create a new application, and I assume you already know about Replicated, so we'll not go into much details on the vendor portal here. So we're going to go straight to releases, and in releases, we're going to create our first release. And for this video, I'm going to use just the UI, not the CLI. This creates a sample application, by the way. It's an Nginx deployment. So everything here is kind of geared towards that Nginx model. But I don't want this, so I'm going to delete it. And I want a pretty lightweight application here, so I'm going to remove the pre-flights and the support bundle as well. So now to create my release, I want to just drag and drop that tar.gz that we created just a few seconds ago. So I'm going to drag it and drop it from Finder into the replicated vendor portal. Here's where I specify to use native Helm. So this is when it comes to deploy the application into your customer environment, we'll use Helm. This creates this file, which is a replicated API file. It's a Helm chart type file. And what it does, it contains information about the chart. So if I switch over to the chart.yaml here, you can see the version 12.2.5 and the name of the chart, WordPress. So it takes that information. And while we're here, you can see also that you see the values file, right? So this is where are all the fields that you can override for deploying WordPress. So I'm going to show you in this video how to map this to a UI field. So I'm going to take the WordPress blog name and we're going to create a UI, a field where the end user can provide us the blog name, and we'll map it to this value at deploy time. Then there is another value that I need to override to get this deployed. By default, this will run on port 80, but my cluster already has that port occupied. So I'm going to come down to the service definition. So it's going to be service and then port 80. So this part I won't override the type, just a port. So the first step is we're going to create our configuration field. And by the way, I could just deploy this, right? I could create a release here, I could deploy this, and it would work just fine. It would just deploy with the default values. So I'm here now in the config file, and this is another replicated API file. These fields are for the Nginx deployment, so I'm going to delete one that I don't need, and then this text field, we're just going to repurpose it. So I'm going to just paste the values, the name of the value from the values file. I'm going to use that also in the ingress host name. Replace that. Since this is the title, let's make it readable, so give it some spaces and capitalize as appropriate. I'll leave the text help text, and this when it can toggle on and off when the field is visible. We want it visible all the time, so I remove that. So now we have our field defined. So now we just need to tell Replicated about it. We need to tell Replicated, hey, take the value from this field and map it to that value in the values file. So to do that, we come to the replicated file, the Helm chart file, and here we're going to copy the value that we got from the values file, right? WordPress blog name. We need to add a colon here. And then we're going to reference the field. And we use that by using templating. This is based on, it's just Go templating here, folks. So by putting REPL here, it knows that it's a replicated templating that we're using. And config option is how you tell it to use the value of a field, and then you provide the name of the field. So we're telling it Replicated to use the value from the config option WordPress blog and map it to the WordPress blog name field. Then down here, I'm going to specify the port I do want to use instead. In this case, we will not provide a user interface, a field. We could if we wanted to, but for this video, we're not. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, I guess, first make sure I have those values right. So it was the WordPress blog name, and notice how that's all the way to the left. That means that that's why we only indented it once in the values file, right? So you pay attention to that, and then that's how you map. And it's port 80. So I think I got everything correctly done. Before I deploy the application, I do want to modify this. I want to provide the application name here, personalize it a little bit. So I changed the title to WordPress. Oh, not WordPress, WordPress. The status informer will let me know when the deployment is ready to go. So I do want to put WordPress here. And I also want to be able to access the UI. So I'm going to ask Replicated, I'm going to install this on my existing cluster. So it will do a port forward for the admin console. I want to also do a port forward to the WordPress UI. So I'm going to enter the ports here and specify the service name. And I know the service name and the ports because I know the ports because I'm overriding them, and the service name I went into the Helm chart to look. So this looks like it's ready to go. So I'm going to just making sure everything looks good. Let's save the release and let's promote it to the unstable channel. We'll promote it, and now we have something to deploy. So I'm going to switch over now to the channel screen and grab the install command. So I'm going to use an existing cluster command. I'm going to do copy command. I'm going to switch over to one of my terminals where I have kubectl access to my cluster. And I'm just going to paste the command here and hit enter. Now what this will do is it will download the kubectl plugin cuts. It will install it on my laptop here, and then it will prompt me where to deploy this. So I'll have it create a namespace, and I will let that run for just a second. Now, while this is running, let me copy the namespace, because I do want to monitor what's going on in that namespace, and I will need it here. So I'm going to go copy this, and I'm going to switch over to another terminal where I can kind of monitor the progress. But before we do that, it's about to prompt me for the password, so I'm just going to wait a second here. Okay, so let me provide the password. Now I'm going to switch over to my other terminal and monitor what's going on. So let me actually do watch command. I'm going to copy this command here to get the pods for the namespace. So as we can see here, the pods for COTS ADM, which is COTS is the open source project that powers the replicated admin console. It looks like it's deployed, all the pods are up and running. So I'm going to go to another tab here in my browser, and I'm going to now browse to localhost 8800, provide my the password I provided. I need a license, which I forgot to create, so we're going to go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to create a customer here, just so we have a license. And the important thing here is that it's mapped to that channel, and that's all we need. So now we'll download the file once this is saved. Here we go. And we'll just drag and drop it into the admin console here. So we'll close this. So the next screen is going to be the blog name, the field we created. And here it is. So now we can enter here the blog name. We'll enter demo blog and click on continue. Since I omitted the pre-flight file, pre-flights will not run. It will go directly to deploy the application. So if we switch over to the terminal here, wow, you see there's a lot of things going on here. So let's, looks like the WordPress pods are now being deployed. I know that MariaDB kind of has to be up and running before the WordPress pod is up and running. So this will take a second. While this is running, oh no, it's making some progress here. Okay. So this will take a second or so, a few more seconds, and then we'll be able to go to the UI for WordPress. In the meantime, why don't we switch over to the UI, and we can see how the values file has been mapped to the files. So in the admin console under View Files, you have these three sections: Upstream, Base, and Overlays. Upstream shows you the files as they come from the vendor portal. So here's the WordPress file that we created, right? And here's how we map the values. Under Base, you can see how everything gets templated out. So here's the Helm chart, and it's looking at the contents of the Helm chart. And here's how all the templating would look like, right, once the Helm chart is deployed. And this is the deployment for WordPress, and this is where the blog name environment variable gets fed to. So if we look just over right here, you can see the demo blog that we provided in the config option. Okay, so it looks like WordPress has been deployed. So now we have the port forward for port 8080. So now if we put that in we switch over to the browser, we can see WordPress with demo blog as the title, which is what we provided. So hopefully in this video, now you've seen how Replicated supports Helm charts and kind of the advantages that there are by using Replicated to deploy to your customers' environments. If you have any questions or would like to see more videos, please go to replicated.com. Thank you so much. Goodbye.